Welcome, foolish readers, to a spooky edition of Shit We've Read, brought to you by the creeps at Oblivion Geeks and the ghouls at Bilo Network. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Shit We've Read, a sci-fi fantasy book podcast hosted by some geeky friends. On this episode, we will be talking about A Dowry of Blood, which is a horror fantasy novel written by S.T. Gibson. But before we can do that, I need to introduce my two guest hosts for this episode. Joining me, as always, is Laura Benson. Hey, Laura, what's up?
What's up?
How's it going?
Good. Glad to be here again.
Me too. And I'm also really glad to introduce our other guest host for this episode. We convinced her to come back for another episode. Ladies and gentlemen, she reads, she plays video games, she does it all. Emma Skies. What's up, Emma?
With the way that you paused, I was like, did he forget my name?
I'm buying time. It'll come to me. It'll come to me.
It was like, oh, that was it. I'm good. Thank you guys for having me again.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I'm always excited to hear your thoughts because I know you got some hot takes usually. So
I like to think so.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun last time you were on with us too. So we are excited to get into this next book with you.
I still have not finished the series from the one we read before. I haven't finished The Wayfarers.
I haven't either.
I did. It was really good.
I know. I kept seeing you on Goodreads every time that you would update that you were reading on. I was like, God damn it, I need to get those books. But my Barnes & Noble never has them. It has the first book, and then it has something like way later in the series, and nothing in between.
Gotcha.
Bummer.
I told Laura that she's really going to like the second book.
Only the second book?
Well, I mean, you'll like all of them, but the second book in particular is going to be like right up your alley.
Okay.
Emma, you're a little more of a wild card when it comes to sci-fi, so I don't know which one's really going to pique your interest, but they're all really good. I will say they go in different directions.
I'll let you know as I go through which one strikes my fancy the most.
Perfect.
We'll start narrowing it down as she reads sci-fi. Figure it out.
Yeah. Well, this kind of segues into, the thing we do before we talk about the book we're reading and talking about other shit we've read recently. Emma, would you like to tell us a little bit about some other books you've read recently? I know you've been reading some spooky books. Anything good?
I've been trying to read spooky books, and I've been sort of failing. I've been now spooky catfished twice this month, where I read a book because it was supposed to be spooky, and at the end it turns out it's not, and it was like either explainable or just wasn't explained. But so I've been spooky catfished this month. I've read I read one of the worst books I've read all year this month. But as far as ones that I liked, let's see, what did I read? I started the City of Ghosts series by V.E. Schwab. It's her first middle grade that I've read from her. So I wasn't sure. That was kind of one of those where I was like, I don't know if I'm too old for middle grade. If I'm not, like, is it not going to hit me the same way? But it's still like a good story, So, and that one, actually about ghosts, did not get catfished.
Nice.
So yeah, what have I done? I did White Smoke was okay. I wanted that one to be better than it was. And then I'm like blanking on everything I've read in the last however long. Let me pull up my Goodreads.
I mean, that always happens when anybody asks you anything. I literally saw a meme earlier today. It's like, has plenty of favorite songs. You asked me what my favorite song is. Couldn't tell you one. Couldn't tell you a single song I've ever
heard a
listened
song
to.
in my whole life. Devil Makes 3 was really good. I kind of went into that pretty blind because that was one of the subscription boxes that I have. But like two students at a school who find an ancient vault hidden in their library and accidentally release a demon from a book. And
sounds cool.
To figure out what the hell happened. That one was really fun though, because it's a dark academia set in the place where I went to school.
Oh, that's right.
And I was so excited. And as it goes on, it mentions where the main character lives, and he lives on the same street that I lived on when I went to school there. I was like, 5 stars immediately. This is amazing. This is perfect.
That would be cool, reading a book where you recognize all of the stuff that they mention.
It was funny because he's talking about like there's always parties on the street that he lives on, and all I'm thinking in my head is, yeah, because you live on Frat Row. I know all the houses on that street are frat houses. So that was
That's
fun.
cool.
I like reading like local stuff like that where you can tell the author actually lived there and like knows what they're talking about because they're talking about specific streets and specific areas. And I was like, you actually went there and you actually lived there.
That sounds cool.
I've read a few books that have mentioned Sacramento, but none of them have really like taken place in Sacramento. So I'm still waiting. One day, maybe.
You guys gotta find one and do a local episode of shit we've read.
Hey,
You should.
that'd be cool.
Not to give you
Homebrew.
more work.
Should be great. Homebrew edition. All you do is give us more work to do, like random spin-offs.
You're welcome.
After Dark, Homebrew. What else? Anyhow, Laura, what have you been reading?
I just finished Project Hail Mary not too long ago. So now I think all three of us have read it now.
We all love it. Can we just talk about that
It's
instead?
so good.
Oh my god.
I
Oh
think
my
it's my
God.
favorite book this year.
That's fair. That's an absolutely fair.
Yeah.
It was
reaction to
so
have.
amazing. I when I was done reading it, like I was telling Jason, I was like, man, this book makes me wish I was a scientist.
I was like following you on Goodreads, and every like day or so I'd see you update your page number, and I was like, she's getting closer. She's almost done. Oh my god,
She's
where's she
almost
at
there.
now?
Well, I actually, so my husband he does not read books, and I somehow got him to agree to listen to the audiobook for this, and he's hooked.
Yeah.
And so it's really fun. Every day that he comes home from work, he's like, oh, I got to this part, this just happened, and we get to talk about it. So it's been really cool being able to have my own little book club with my husband.
I'm trying to bully one of our mutual friends, Aaron, into doing the audiobook for it because I want to hear what the audiobook sounds like for some of the stuff.
Oh, it's so good.
It's
And-
good. I've heard
Yeah.
some of it.
And then not for this one, but I have heard that the audiobook for The Martian is actually a better experience than reading like the physical book.
Really?
Yeah. So I think I was like, okay, so it's going to be on that level because they know they have to live up to that. But yeah, so I'm going to bully Aaron until he reads it so that I can like listen to snippets of it as he sends them to me.
Well, you can tell him that, me and Jason say that he should read it too.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's 3
Yep.
against 1 at this point.
It's going to
Yeah.
happen.
We'll bully him.
What about you, Jason? What are you reading?
Well, I'm going through a bunch of spooky stuff too for Halloween, obviously. I've mentioned some of the stuff I recently read on our last mini-sode with or about the plot.
Mhm.
But one book I just read earlier this month that I really, really loved, first time reading it, was I Am Legend
Oh.
by Richard Matheson, which many people may know as the movie that was developed with Will Smith.
Mhm.
The book is so good. It's pretty short. It's really, really good. It's a great look at what it's like to feel alone and isolated more than anything else. Because this guy is the last human on
Literally.
Earth. Yeah, it's just everybody else is a vampire. He's just trying to survive, and so it's a great way of it was a great angle to take of not just vampires are trying to get you. No, you're by yourself. Like you have no one else in your life, and that was really, really good. So highly recommend that. And then the last book I finished before the one we're talking about today is The Lost Girls by Sonia Hartle. I'm not going to talk too much about that book because I'm definitely going to be bringing it up later in the episode.
Ooh.
Okay.
There are quite a few parallels. So I'll save that. But yeah.
Okay. Cool.
All right. So let's get down to business and talk about the book we're here to talk about, which is A Dowry of Blood by S.E. Gibson. Laura, would you do us the honor of reading the synopsis, please?
Sure. A lyrical and dreamy reimagining of Dracula's brides, A Dowry of Blood is a story of desire, obsession, and emancipation. Saved from the brink of death by a mysterious stranger, Constanta is transformed from a medieval peasant into a bride fit for an undying king. But when Dracula draws a cunning aristocrat and a starving artist into his web of passion and deceit, Constanta realizes that her beloved is capable of terrible things. Finding comfort in the arms of her rival consorts, she begins to unravel their husbands' dark secrets. With the lives of everyone she loves on the line, Constanta will have to choose between her own freedom and her love for her husband. But bonds forged by blood can only be broken by death.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so as always, I'm going to ask you for your non-spoiler first impressions. However, I do want to point out that there are quite a few trigger warnings in this book. We will list them in a bit, but I think also listing them might count as a spoiler. So if you're at all sensitive to certain topics, certain content, I implore you to look up the book right now on Goodreads, and you can find a list of trigger warnings there, and then continue on. So just this is your pre-warning, and then we'll get into the official warning later. All right, so non-spoiler impressions. Emma, what'd you think of this book overall?
Oh, starting with me. Put me right on the spot.
Yes.
I really liked this. I loved this book. I read it in one sitting. It's pretty short, so I read it in one sitting in about 3 or 4 hours. And I literally could not put it down. From the first page hooked me. I didn't really know a ton about it. I knew the basic premise. I was like, Dracula and brides. Kind of all you needed getting it. I was like, all right, I'm sold. I'll do it. Cool, let's go. It was one of those that somebody that I know had recommended it, and that was all I needed to know. I was like, I know what I like, I know what you like, so if you like this, then we're good. And it was just, the writing style was so good.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting to me that I was so hooked, because usually the point of view that it's told in would bother me. I would hate it, because it's that not only is it first person, but it's first person speaking to the reader. And I do not like that.
It was kind of weird at first.
It's my least favorite point of view to read in. So the fact that I loved it so much despite that, was just so telling of how how good everything else about it was.
You brought up a couple things that reminded me. I was going to ask you both, which I think is very important to know where you're coming from. Have either of you read the original novel Dracula by Bram Stoker?
No.
Nope.
Okay.
I tried.
Okay.
I never even tried.
Okay, that's fair. I'm just wondering where you're both coming from with this. Okay, cool.
I mentioned before the show that I've never even seen the movie Bram Stoker's Dracula. The only thing that I have as a distinct memory is the NBC show from 2013 that was canceled after one season. That is, and then a general
wow,
knowledge that you just have from existing in society of Dracula. But Jonathan Rhys-Meyers' Dracula TV show, 10 episodes. That's all I've got.
Dracula
I've not seen it.
Oh, and Van Helsing. That movie. Yeah. So I've got all my bases covered.
Wow. Dracula has been such a large part of pop culture for over a century, literally everywhere. And the only two things you've ever consumed were the show and Van Helsing.
Yep.
That is honestly really impressive. Wow.
But because it's such a big part of pop culture, I by osmosis the general overlay of it. Yeah.
Common knowledge.
Exactly. How dare you? Don't dunk on Hugh Jackman like that, okay? That movie's a gem.
Oh, I love that movie for how bad it is. I watch that movie more often than I probably should. Wow, okay.
I've not watched the show. Emma's I don't know how accurate it is. Jason, have you seen it?
No, I honestly forgot it even existed until Emma mentioned it. I vaguely remember seeing posters with.
We got robbed. It got canceled after one season. I'm still mad about it.
I'm looking it up honestly right now because I'm really curious. Laura, what did you think of this book?
I really liked it. I think I was kind of similar to Emma. Not really quite sure if I was gonna like it at first because of the point of view. The way it was written was kind of weird. I didn't really know what to expect going into it. I just knew that it had to do with Dracula and his brides. But I ended up really liking it, and certain times kind of felt like I could kind of relate to certain things that they experienced, like emotions. And I think that it's not necessarily the type of horror that I was expecting, but it still felt horror. Like there were aspects of it that still kind of, terrified me and were still suspenseful. But it wasn't like, your typical vampire, super violent kind of like what people expect today. But I really enjoyed it. They had a lot of really great characters that I feel like were still relatable, even though they're supposed to be, super old vampires.
All right.
So, what about you?
Overall, I really enjoyed it. The writing was very well done. I loved her writing style. I was super engrossed in the storyline. I did come at this from having read Dracula. I read it a couple times just recently, earlier this
Mhm.
month, to kind of get ready for this book and other things I've read. But also because I'm familiar with the original story, I couldn't help but connect the two and see how well they connected, if that makes sense.
Mm.
Like, I know this is a reimagining, and you can get as imaginative as you want with reimaginings, but like, how close to Dracula is this staying?
Okay.
And it wasn't at first, and so that kind of annoyed me. But then I came to terms with that, and I was totally fine with it. But then there was a line in the book that annoyed me again. It's like, okay, well, I was giving you the benefit of the doubt, and you totally ruined that. So, but that's probably spoiler territory.
Yep.
So, yeah. Anything else you want to say before we get into it?
I do want to mention that because we kind of all mentioned the point of view now. So I stand by the fact that I don't like that point of view generally in books, but I think in the case of this book, especially by the time you get to the end, I understood why it was that way. And it's not something that, even though I don't typically like that point of view, it's not something I would change, because I think it's so important to the story and so important to the message that that's the point of view it was of Constanza telling her story and telling it to the person reading.
Absolutely.
It
I
was,
agree.
yeah, like it would fundamentally change the message of the book to change the point of view and make it just like third person.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Okay, so I think we're ready for spoiler stuff. As I mentioned earlier, there are some trigger warnings for this book, so I'm going to read them off right now. These are coming straight from the author on Goodreads. So I'm listing them off because we might get into them in the course of the discussion, and I want you to be warned. So please take care of yourself and tread carefully if any of these things might be difficult for you. So this book contains depictions of emotional, verbal, and physical intimate partner abuse, gaslighting, war, famine, and plague, blood and gore, consensual sexual content, sadomasochism, self-harm, body horror, violence and murder, alcohol use, depression, and mania. The book also contains references to, although they're not really directed at any named character, also contains sexual assault, drug use, and drowning. So again, take care of yourself. If any of this is a sensitive topic for you, just be warned. Okay. Okay. Before we get really started, I believe her name is pronounced Constanza.
I've been wondering how to pronounce it this
It's not.
whole
It's not. It's
time.
not a hard T. I believe it is taken from the Romanian spelling, and the
Fair.
Romanian alphabet has a special character of T that has like a little tail on it. That's like a TZ.
Okay.
Constanza. Okay. So it's like a sharp Z almost.
Yeah.
Is it Constanza or Constanza?
Constanza, probably. There's like a TZ. Constanza.
Yeah.
There it is.
Constanza. Okay.
Yes.
Thanks, Jason.
Yeah, I just heard you both say
We all saying it
Constanza.
wong.
Yeah, so I'll fix it.
It got easier when she started, like when Alexi starts calling her Constance. I was like, I can say that. I was like, I could have named her Constance too, because I can say that.
Okay.
Right.
Now that we know how to say it.
Yeah. Okay, so it follows Constanza and her transformation into a vampire. The first of his brides. My biggest gripe with this book was the formatting.
It was
It's
a
Like
little
the physical
weird.
formatting of
The
like
physical
the page,
formatting,
yeah, and
the
like no
pages.
chapters, and just like sometimes
No.
like a chapter break would just be a paragraph on its own page.
Right.
If I didn't like not looking at the side of it, I would have assumed this was self-published, because I find a lot of self-published books have odd formatting like that, but it wasn't.
It felt like a student having to write an essay, and it's like, I need to make this essay 10 pages. And so I'm going to double space. I'm going to take where line breaks here. I'm going to do whatever I can to reach those 10 pages, even though it's really only 5 pages of content.
Maybe she was just writing, this is all she could write today, and then went to the next page next time.
I guess if you're looking at it as her writing a single letter to her husband, then the idea of chapter breaks wouldn't make sense. Like it would take you out and be like, oh, I'm reading a book. And so I guess in lieu of doing chapter breaks, because that wouldn't work, there's just like its own paragraph page. So I guess I get that, but it was super weird while reading.
When I first started reading and I noticed how the pages were weird like that, I was like, oh, this isn't really this many pages. I'm going to get through this a lot faster than I thought.
It's a super quick read.
Yeah, because like page 5 is a single sentence on the page. Yeah.
It bugged me because I thought it was trying to replicate what they did with Dracula, which is it's all told through letters and like journal entry. So it'll state this is from Mina Harker to Jonathan Harker, dated blah, 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 blah. So I assumed it's like, okay, these are her own like journal entries that she's writing to her husband or something. It's not formatted that way, but it kind of made sense early on. And then later in the book, like we're jumping ahead now, to I think when Dracula, although he's not named Dracula in this book at all, he's attacking Alexi's friends that he has over. There's like that big kind of quote unquote fight scene, but it's still broken up. Like it's one scene, but it's still broken up oddly. It was like, well, that's not the way you would write a letter. You would just finish the entire thing. Like these aren't journal entries. I don't know what the hell's going on, but whatever. That's just personal gripe, I guess. It didn't detract from the story itself. It was just very weird, and it caused me to do more brain work than I wanted to early on to try to figure out what the hell's going on.
Did it kind of like take you out of the moment?
Yeah, it did. Because I was trying to figure out what the importance of this was. Why is it formatted this way? And then eventually I realized there's no importance to it.
I just kind of ignored it after a while. Just, this ended, just going to the next page.
I didn't mind it so much, but it did stand out as like an interesting, like, I got it. Like, especially because you turn to that first page and you're immediately hit with like, there's only 2 sentences on this page. And then you turn to the second page and there's only, a couple paragraphs. But I guess if it's like the start and stop, especially in the beginning, if it's like the start and stop of her trying to figure out what to write when, I can justify that to myself while I'm reading. And then I just kind of like got into it. And then I really did just treat them like chapter breaks.
Yeah, in the beginning, there is even a couple of lines on one of the pages where it's crossed out. Like you could tell she was just kind of starting to write this and working through the story that she was trying to tell. So that kind of immediately sets it up as she is writing this. Jason, you just mentioned Dracula. It's funny because it's never specified in the book that this is Dracula.
Nope.
The only reason we know or assume it is because of the synopsis. Yeah, because it says it there. But that's something that I kept paying attention to. I was like, wait, because I couldn't remember where it actually said Dracula. And I was like, it still hasn't said Dracula in anywhere. Like, it's not in this book anywhere. Nope. Where, like, why do I think this is Dracula?
Well, she very deliberately, like, there's a reason for it. In the letter, she specifically says, I'm not giving you a name. Like, I will never call you by your name in this letter. You were never a name to me. Like, you were always titles. Even when I called you by your given name, like, you were still just this bit larger than life person. And it's a conscious choice of hers to not name him. And I think that works really well in conjunction with the fact that the first thing he did was take her name.
Yeah.
And take it away from her and give her something that he wanted for her instead. And she was like, you know what? You don't get one either.
Good point.
As I was reading it, I don't know, maybe halfway through the book, I started like really trying to figure out how does this fit in with the original novel, Dracula? Like, is this a direct continuation? Is it a loose reimagining? And the author has said that it is a very loose reimagining. of the book. But as I was reading, it's like, well, maybe this isn't Dracula. Maybe for my own sake, I can accept this as not being about Dracula. It's a different vampire who happens to have 3 spouses, and that's totally fine. I still enjoy the story. It's totally okay. But then later on, there is a reference to the Harkers.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, so this is Dracula then, and these are the 3 women. Well, in the original novel, it's 3 women. Although this book, we have 2 women and Alexei, a man. And so that kind of annoyed me. It was like, man, I was okay with this not being about Dracula.
Maybe the Harkers were also a very loose reimagining of the Harkers.
Maybe the Harkers is a very popular last name back in. It's like Smith.
Yes.
Johnson.
Just your Victorian
Lopez,
Smith.
Yeah. Could have been anyone. They don't say first names, right?
They don't say first names. They didn't. So I mentioned that instead of 3 women, like in the original novel, it's 2 women and a man.
Mm-hmm.
The original novel never specifies that they are brides. No, they never say that they're married to Dracula. They don't really give any sort of relationship between Dracula and the 3 women. They're just 3 women there. And so it's open to interpretation of how they are connected to Dracula. Some people think that it's one of them is a wife and the other 2 are daughters. They're only referred to as the weird sisters. But in pop culture, it's always become the 3 brides. Emma, are you smiling because of Sabrina?
No, not even Sabrina. Harry Potter.
Oh, the band?
The band.
I was definitely thinking Sabrina.
So knowing that the original story has 3 women, but this one does not, what are your thoughts on this modernization or this reimagining of having?
So I follow Katie Robert on Instagram, and she's the one that read the After Dark books, or she wrote the After Dark books that we're going to read. And she made a point like a week or 2 ago that I thought when I was reading this, and she was like, you cannot convince me that any immortal being, any being who lives for an eternity is straight and will never stray from being straight. You cannot convince me that's true. And so I was like, yeah, this makes sense. He's been alive for how many thousands of years at this point? Think he's limiting himself to women? Absolutely not.
Mm-mm.
I had that exact same thought yesterday. As I was walking to lunch. I had started it yesterday. As I was walking to lunch, it's like, yeah, if I was alive for thousands of years, I'd fucking try a guy. Why not? Like, what else is there to do? Like,
play the field a little bit. Sample
like,
a little bit of everything.
You're gonna go try stuff.
Yeah, I'm gonna try different foods and never would have tried. I would have tried different thrill rides and I don't know. Anyway.
Well, when so much of like our own, whether you want to call it morality, sexuality, anything is tied to the society that you're brought up in. When you leave behind the bonds of any kind of society, because you've just lived through so many of them, then what holds you to anything at that point? You're just a free agent.
Yeah. No, I liked that that the author included a husband in this family, because it's just nice to see that it's not just a man with a bunch of wives, just a bunch of women around him. Like, because women are more than that. And obviously that is one of the underlying things, or not underlying. That's one of the themes of this book, is these people are trying to be their own person. But I think that having a man part of their relationship, just made it more diverse and made it more interesting and like what you guys just said, it's more realistic for somebody who's been alive for that long.
And then I think when so much of the book overall, like the general theme of it is about an abusive relationship and how those start and where it comes from and the stages they go through, I think adding in a husband makes it a really important note that that's not a singularly female experience to be manipulated and abused and harmed like that. And to show that it isn't a gendered thing. It's a genderless idea of just abuse in general. And it can happen regardless of what gender any of the parties are.
That was a very good point.
Yeah. And it makes it more relatable for more
Mhm.
people.
I did think it was weird that there was this weird blurred line between whether Alexei was a husband or a son.
Yes, like
Yeah,
specifically with Constanza.
Yeah.
it did get a little weird there.
Yeah.
Like I get the idea of like protectiveness because like she's at this point she is centuries old and he's 19 and she sees in him largely who she was. You know, she's like he's the same age I was when he found me, and so she has this immediate protective instinct over him. And they go decades, if not centuries, without them ever having any kind of romantic entanglement. And that like is just how their relationship develops. And so when that line is crossed, it's like, yeah, I get that there's nothing, like, you're not actually his parent. You're not actually, you know, related to this kid at all. But, like, you still treated him like a child this whole time. Although, in that vein, you know, Dracula is the parent or old enough to be a parent to any of the people that he takes on.
Yeah, he kind of treats them all like his children.
When he
Mhm.
So
calls
that,
them
I mean, he's
sisters the first time
constantly.
they're all in bed together, and he
Yeah,
was
that was
like,
weird.
I think the line is like, "Come kiss your sister," and I was like, "Ooh, let's not with that language. Let's find a different word for what's happening here, please."
Yeah, he calls them brother and sisters. Like, it's just,
Uncomfortable. I am uncomfy.
yeah.
But even that was in the original novel too. Like at the time,
Yeah.
like Mina and her best friend Lucy, they call each other sisters, but they weren't related. A lot of the brides, well, quote unquote brides in the book, refer to each other as sister in the novel. It was just kind of this. I don't know, kind of like when you call like, "What's up, cuz?" Like we're not actually cousins, but you know we're connected somehow. We're that same generation.
I mean, I
I am
guess that probably
uncomfy.
also was normal back in his day.
Could not tell you how
I
threesomes
don't
worked
know.
back in that age. I don't know. I don't know how menages work back then.
I mean, I think they work the same way now. Honestly, for being real.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, there was a lot of stuff that was uncomfortable in general in this book. You know, I mentioned earlier that I mean, again, I don't know necessarily what I was expecting, but I wasn't necessarily expecting this, in that
Mm-hmm.
a lot of, the all of the abuse that they are going through is just like a different type of horror than what I expected.
Yeah.
And a lot of times the way that it's written was, it's very descriptive, and it like made you feel the things that they were feeling. And sometimes it was terrifying, even if it was just like his reaction to something that was said. Uh,
The way that she writes him as somebody that she grows to fear is so visceral and so like uncomfortable in the right way, in
mhm.
the way that she meant for it to be, where like you're on the edge of your seat with Constanza at all times, where she is constantly walking on eggshells, like, is this thing I say gonna set him off? Is this thing that I do gonna set him off? What do I like? How do I change myself and my perception of the world around me and the things that I do to not set him off? Because I never know what it's gonna be. It could be nothing, it could be anything, like it could be something I don't even have control over. And like the way that you get that, like, it's like a tight feeling and you're just constantly wound up waiting for the other shoe to drop, and it's a horrible way to live. And it's just a really, the way that Gibson writes how Constanza feels and how she lives her life like that, and like eventually over centuries grows to realize like this isn't anything that I should be allowing, or this isn't any way to live, but at that point she's stuck. It was really powerful. It was really, like you said, it was a horror that I didn't expect from this. I didn't expect it to be quite so human.
Mhm.
So one of the things that I like, so I don't know if you guys want to go through like plot stuff or if you have any like timeline
Do
that
it.
you do.
Let's do it.
But like from the immediate way that the book starts, like literally one of the first lines is, I believe one of the first lines is, it was not my intention to murder you. Like I didn't set out to kill you at any point. So from the very beginning, you know the ending. So you know that
Mhm.
this is going to end with her killing him. And what that reminds me of is I was watching the documentary on Hamilton. And so I don't know if either of you have listened to or seen Hamilton, but in the opening song, wow. First of all, that's a much longer conversation we don't have time for here. Oh my God. We will sit here and watch it. We will pause this and spend 3 hours on Disney Plus right now. But so in the very first song, Aaron Burr is narrating, and like he has this line about how, you know, I'm the one that shot him. And in watching the documentary, Leslie Odom Jr., who plays Burr, talked about how when he was first reading the script and he saw that line, he was like, okay, so he was trying to think of how he was going to play the character. And the fact that in the opening number, you know that he kills him, that means that we're not leading up to the death of Hamilton as like a surprise. We know going in. So I need to play this as specifically getting from the person I am now to the person who's going to kill Hamilton. So in this scenario, it was like, you're not reading to lead up to him dying. Like you are, because you know that's how it ends, but you're not going to be shocked by the fact that he dies. You know going in, and you're watching the whole book play out and formulating in your mind how she gets to the point, how it gets so bad, and how she, you know, gets enough of herself back to fight back and to kill him. And like that very much shapes the way that you read the whole story. So starting off with that changes the way that you go into it, which I thought was really, really well done.
Wow. Yeah. Thanks for that. Like Star Wars.
Yes.
You know,
like Star Wars.
He becomes Darth Vader, but you know.
How does he become Darth Vader? How does this little shit with 8,000 midichlorians turn into Darth Vader?
I blame Laura for that because she's wearing a Star Wars shirt. So I saw that. I'm like, oh.
I feel like we always talk about Star Wars. I'm pretty sure we've mentioned Star Wars in almost every single one of our episodes.
Now you just got to keep it going.
This time's your fault, though.
Sorry, my bad.
Who wears a Star Wars shirt to a vampire fight? That's the way the saying goes.
Hey,
right?
this is the sweater that I wore for an ugly sweater Halloween.
I remember
because I couldn't find an ugly sweater in time.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm kind of there. Anyways,
also really liked in the beginning, and I don't know if it like super stood out to you, but it really, really was a huge standout to me that in the very beginning, she's talking about how she's dying. Constanza is dying. Raiders came to her village. They burned her family alive. They killed them, and they beat her. And she mentions multiple times she's laying there, you know, drowning in her own blood. Her bones are broken. She mentions, you know, they beat me. They, you know, I have bruises in places, you know, and but she never, ever, ever says that they sexually assaulted her. She never says that they raped her. And that was a massive standout because I think this scenario written by almost anybody else, this scenario written especially by a male author, would have put that in there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
And she she makes a conscious decision not to say that. And I love that because it's so uncomfortable to me to read things, especially, you know, things like Game of Thrones, where they, you know, it's kind of justified as being like, oh, we have to show that the world is terrible. It's like, well, her family just burned alive. She's being beaten to death. The children in the house are dead. I don't think you need to add on to that.
Yeah.
By saying that they were also raped. But like the fact that she left that out, I think was a conscious decision. And I was very, very happy with it. Because I was like, it's one of those things that when I see that coming in a story, I get very tense about it. And I'm waiting for that shoe to drop. And it never did. And I like didn't know how to process that. I was like, I've never really seen somebody go out of their way not to mention that in a, you know, when you're trying to describe brutality like this. And I was very grateful for that. That was really nice. So in talking about, you know, there's all these trigger warnings, but she also, you know, she doesn't go out of her way to be shocking for the sake of being shocking.
Nope.
That is very true. Good point. Yeah, pretty much everything that happens in this book is, I mean, there's good reason for it, and it's not just pointless.
Right.
Yeah, it's not just violence for the sake of violence.
Yeah, I didn't really. It didn't stand out to me that was excluded, but now they bring it up. That is really awesome of Gibson to have done.
It was just weird to note and like be aware in the moment of like, I went in and as I'm reading what's happening to her, I'm expecting that to be the next line. And every time it wasn't, it was a surprise. And then to think back on everything that we consume in media that has taught me that that's the next line. And I was like, oh,
No,
shit.
you're right.
I'm like, I am 2 pages into this and I'm having an existential crisis about media right now. Bravo.
In relation to, I'm pretty sure there's never been a mention of him sexually assaulting any of his brides either.
No, yeah, all of the sex in the book between them is consensual.
So that was great. Even, knowing what type of person he is, you could just like, oh, he's probably hurting them too in that way. But we get to a part, I think, closer to the end of the book where it's mentioned that he's never hurt them before, and the first time that he's hurt them was, I think he hit Alexi.
Yeah, he slaps Alexi.
Yeah, slaps Alexi, and that was like when one of the things that like snapped her out of this, I don't know, this relationship, understanding that there's something wrong here.
Well, and I think
so
that
I appreciated that.
I think that was also a really good way to illustrate that, like, he firmly believes and thinks that he's a good husband to them because he doesn't physically harm them. That's his line.
Yep.
He's like, I don't physically harm you. So all of the rest of it, the manipulation, the coercion, the emotional abuse, the mental abuse, the fear that I instill in you, you should just be grateful that I don't harm you physically.
Good point. Yep.
And so, like, even when he doesn't necessarily forcefully coerce them into bed, there's implications and mentions that they will take him to bed to appease him in certain ways, or like when he gets in a mood,
right.
they know it's easier to just go to bed and have sex than to try and fight him on anything. They're like, we know that that's an easier way to calm him down. And that line that he draws with himself, that a lot of abusers will draw with themselves, where they're like, I don't physically harm you, so I don't know what you're mad about, But she just, everything she does, because, the whole book is really just a story of an abusive relationship and the flow of it, and from the very moment that, and she eventually realizes that he picks her specifically because she's vulnerable and she's somebody that he can mold into the person that he wants. She just, it's all done really, really well, because he goes from her, who he picks her because she's vulnerable, and then on the opposite side you have Magdalena, who he seeks out because she's strong-willed, because she's such an intellectual match for him, because she has her own thoughts and her own opinions, and she is so strong, in a way that women of the age generally weren't. And then, that's what draws him to her, and then he just beats that down. Like, he smothers that out of her until she's the person that he wants him to be again. And then you have somebody like, so it's like all these different ways that she kind of just frames different forms of abuse, and different ways that even a lot of people don't recognize or abuse from each of the spouses that he has. It's all just done really, really well, which is like all I can say about it. Like, she just does it really well.
Yeah.
To like an uncomfortable degree, where like if it's something that you've experienced, or if it's something that you've watched somebody experience and you know what it is, it's so uncomfortable to see what's happening to Constanza, and then to Magdalena, and then Alexi, and see this situation that they're stuck in. And by the time Constanza even realizes anything is wrong, she doesn't know what to do. She's stuck. And then she is stuck in the position of almost being the one to smother Magdalena and Alexi, because she's trying to protect them from him. So she starts to smother parts of their personalities that would grate against him, which is, again, something that she comes to realize. And just this journey of self-discovery that she has, where she becomes complicit in it, and then realizes that, and then becomes the person who's like, we've all been in this long enough. I've been in this long enough. We're gonna take care of business. We're gonna end this now, in a way that she probably wouldn't have done if it was only her. If she was the only one suffering from it, she would not have. She would not have done what she did.
Yeah, she would have been with him for a very, very long time. I mean, she already is with him for a long time, but Yeah. If it's just her and she has nobody else to fight for, yeah, she wouldn't have done anything.
Hmm. That's a really good point. Yeah. Um, Emma, earlier you said that he says like I don't hit you, like, so he thinks he's okay.
Hmm.
Like, I don't do this. Um, but all the other stuff that he does, I feel like maybe to a certain degree he thinks it's within his right because he turned them. I gave you this
He
gift
has
of
ownership.
immortality. Yeah, like I gave you this, so I own you. So everything I do is okay.
I think at one point
Um,
he actually says, "I made you and I can unmake you."
He
I
does.
think so, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. Um, and this book really kind of dives into the. I mean, I mentioned it with I Am Legend, but like the loneliness and isolation of becoming a vampire for so long, and in this world that the book takes place in, you can't exist amongst humans. You're different. You can consume them. You will be found out. They will try to kill you. So you have to remove yourself from society, and so you get really lonely as a vampire. And I think so much media that we consume that's vampires is like, oh, vampires are very sexy and really cool when we're fast, and we got really good hair and we dress in black leather. Um, and so it kind of something desirable. Like you want to be a vampire, and I'll admit, hell yeah, I want to
Hmm.
be a vampire because they seem cool and sexy. But this is like, no, being a vampire, being an immortal sucks. Like you don't have anybody other than your other immortals, and being with someone for 20 years is already a stretch these days. Uh, 1,000 years, hell no. I'm gonna get sick of you so quickly. I want someone new. And so I thought that was a cool way of showing vampirism and what it's like to be a vampire in this book.
Well, and that's a very deliberate choice on his part as well, because she develops human relationships when they're in Venice, and she develops a relationship with a human. She's a very good friend. Alexei goes out all the time, makes tons of friends that are humans, and I guess we just call him Dracula. It's the easier than
Sure.
Dracula.
Yeah.
And Dracula is, again, in something that you see in every abuser, he isolates them very intentionally, and he's the one that says, no, you can't have relationships with humans, they're going to die, they're going to find you out, but they never have a chance to experience that for themselves. They don't really have a chance to explore that idea for themselves, because he tells them, you can only have me. You can have me, and you can have the other people that I allow into your life, and that is it. And he won't even let them like correspond. So like he stops Magdalena from writing letters to people so that
Hmm.
he can isolate them, so they are fully and wholly dependent on him. And the way, and like that is it's a great way to show vampirism and the isolation and the loneliness of that. And part of why I think the story works so well as being a story of abuse couched in fantasy, because it's so easy to isolate somebody in that scenario. It's so easy to isolate them when you can tell them, well, you're going to outlive them. So that's my excuse for why I can push this on you and you won't question it.
Emma, you just mentioned how they all tried to have some kind of relationship, friendship, whatever, with other people, but it's only allowed when Dracula wants it. So one of those examples is, you know, Constanza had a friend that she even said, I probably would have fallen in love with her or something to that effect.
Mm-hmm.
But then, she was forbidden from being friends. But when Dracula wanted Magdalena, then it was, you know,
Yeah, it was
that was going to
fine.
happen. It doesn't matter. It does not matter what anyone else thought. It didn't matter what I cannot say her name. Constanza, does not matter what she thinks. He literally was like, you're going to let me have this. And there's nothing she could do about it.
One of you mentioned earlier that all the sex in this book is consensual, but a lot of the situations revolving around the sexual encounters, I would say, are not consensual. Like Constanza, being okay with Magdalena is like, well, I have to be. Like she convinces herself that it's okay. So yes, I am attracted to her, and okay, fine, I probably do want to be with her, but in a normal circumstance, she would not have agreed to that. except for the fact that
Yeah, good point.
Dracula is pushing it.
I think the way she phrases it is actually, my consent was manufactured.
Mm-hmm.
You created this situation that I was going to walk in on, and there was no other option for me.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's that idea of you didn't say no, I didn't physically harm you, so everything's fine. And she's like, no, you created the situation yourself, and you did it on purpose. And then what am I supposed to do about it?
Dracula's a jerk.
He is, and it's the thing that struck me about this while I was reading it the whole time and that I didn't expect was that it was just so relatable, because I think a lot of us know somebody like that, and a lot of us have seen that happen to people that we know. We've seen, even if it's not something you know stories of people who go through this, and it's almost uncomfortably relatable and uncomfortably relevant the whole time you're reading it, that like, it's framed as this big evil monster, but it's not. It's very, I don't know, it's very human. It's very, very easy to see that and everything else. I don't know, and then just her journey through all of it and the way that she comes out of it at the end, it was just so, it was really, really good. It was
satisfying.
It was
very satisfying.
Happened quickly too.
Yeah, once she made the choice, she was not backing down.
Yeah,
I was a little disappointed by that.
Really,
it happened a little too quickly. I feel like for as big bad Dracula should be, like it just, like the race to the end was very quick.
The way I view it is that it didn't feel too fast, because I think when you have somebody like Constanza or somebody like any of them that's been stuck in that situation for so long, once you make the decision, you cannot wait. You can't waffle on that. It's generally not something that you can take your time on. Like, you have to do it while it's still there. And if you have that opportunity, if you have that perfect moment that they had when there was the mob coming, like, it was now or never. And if we don't do this now, we happen to all be in agreement right now. We're having a good, quote unquote good. We're having a good night. We're all in agreement about this. And if we don't do it now, we might not get a chance again. Because how many centuries has it been? And when are we going to get this again? And then the idea that it was, big bad Dracula, but it ended up being relatively easy because they outnumbered him, is also something that I think was very intentional, because he did not imagine, I think the way she phrases it at one point is, you never imagined that my will could be stronger than yours. So it never occurred to him to have to fight back against them, because he never thought that he would have to. It never occurred to him that he would be outnumbered by these people that he has spent centuries making them stronger and stronger. Because it was always going to be an intellectual thing. He was always above them. He was always stronger than them mentally. So like, he didn't have to worry about it. And then the one time that they're finally like, yeah, no, it's real easy because there's 3 of them.
Yeah, he was very it's very foolish on his part. If he, like, it just shows how how much power he believed he had, which he did all of these years.
Yes.
But he spent all that time pushing them down and controlling them and whatnot, that he probably just assumed that he would never have to worry about them anymore. But they found their will.
Yeah, it just never occurred to him
I
that
didn't
he had
think it was too fast.
I guess I was because it's a vampire story. I was
right.
waiting for some sort of bigger actual fight, like not the decision. I get what you're saying, Emma. Of like, we want to do this now. Let's do it now. I 100% agree. I think it was just the actual physical altercation. I was expecting a little more because I was wanting that from a vampire story. However, you both bring up a good point of like, all right, let's take vampirism out of this story, and instead of it taking place over centuries, it just takes place over a couple decades. This story still 100% works because, like you said, Dracula is a monster, not because he's a vampire, just because he, the man, is a monster. He is manipulative, and he gaslights them and he abuses them and stuff like that. So that's what makes the story work really well, because we all know monsters like this, whether we've dealt with them ourselves or we know someone else who has. That's what makes this book so strong. So I guess looking at it from that angle, the fact that there was no big fight at the end. It was just, there's three of us. We're sick of your bullshit. We're leaving. That's what made it really strong, and that was good. Yeah.
Yeah, and they established like half the book before that the only way they were ever going to leave was by killing him. Because when she finds the letters and she figures out that she was not his first bride and he very likely killed the rest of them, then it's not a matter of I can run away or I can take them and run. It's you have to die. And he even says to Alexei at some point when Alexei's feeling insecure about their relationship, he's like, you know, I will always love you. I'll always have you. You'll always have me. And it's this like, it's supposed to be, the way he's framing it is he's creating a loving moment between the two of them. And then he says, and if I ever lost you, I would hunt the world for you. Like I would hunt you down across the world and I would never lose you. And it's a threat, but he's framing it as, you know, I love you so much. I would always come for you. But it's, if you ever leave me, I will get you back. And so it's got this buildup of the only way we're getting out is if he dies. And the only way he dies is if we do it, because motherfucker's old. I'm looking at my notes here, and I have like a notepad that I keep on my phone where I write down like quotes from books that I really like, or like just quotes that stand out to me. And I can always tell when I got really into a book because they'll just stop. So like I have one from page 5, I have one from page 19, and then I don't have another one for another 100 pages. And like that's always
because
like
you're just too into it.
Because you're too into it to like take the second. And even these, I think I wouldn't type it. I dictated it to my phone, so there's like typos in them because I can tell that Siri didn't hear me right. So that's just a really good indicator of how into a book I am. Like if I really liked a book but I can't find the quotes on my phone, it's because I was too into it to like take myself out and be like, oh, this is good. That's why I can't notate books. Because I'm thinking back to when I was talking about the way that she took his name, the way that he took hers, and I saved what she had said about it. So she said, like in the very beginning when she decided, you know, she wasn't going to call him Dracula, she said, in this world, you are what I say you are, and I say you are a ghost, a long night's fever dream that I have finally woken up from. I say that you are the smoke whisper memory of a flame throwing ice, suffering under an early summer spring. Oh, that's probably thawing ice. Siri didn't hear me. Thawing ice, suffering under an early summer spring. I'm going to try that again. Thawing ice, suffering under an early spring sun. A chalk leather, for the love of God. Anyway, a chalk ledger of deaths being wiped clean. I say you do not have a name. Now imagine I said that without fucking anything up. And that's a really good line. That was really powerful until I said leather instead of ledger, because Siri doesn't know what I'm saying.
I thought you were saying chocolate leather.
Chocolate leather, yes. But all that to say, like between that line and then the last paragraph made me cry, and I read it like 4 or 5 or 6 times over and over and over again, because it's just, that's the satisfying. To me, the satisfying part wasn't her stabbing him. It wasn't her staking him in the heart. It was her deciding that she was going to forget him. And she basically says, I'm putting down my pen. I will forget you. I will never think of you again. And I will move on and I will live my life and I will be happy. And like, that is the satisfying end to me, so much more than killing him.
In some ways, I feel like killing him is the easy option. Yes. But allowing yourself to move on and live a life without him in the back of your mind is the more difficult thing for sure.
I was so upset. Like at first when I'm reading the end and I realized, like you realize kind of in that like quote unquote epilogue that they're splitting up. And like Alexei's
Very
getting
quickly.
on a ship. Yeah, like Alexei's getting on a ship. First of all, he's getting on a ship, and for a hot second, I was real scared it was the Titanic.
Me
I thought that too. I thought that
I'm
too.
so glad.
I was like, what ship is this?
Well, that was my second thought.
Waiting.
Well, my first thought was, okay, is this connecting to any other story? Like, is there any other vampire story where a vampire gets on a ship? That was my first thought. And I was like, wait, where's it? What's the timeline? Is this the Titanic?
I was so scared.
I totally thought that.
But so he's getting on a ship. Magdalena is taking, her carriage, and they're all splitting. And when my first instinct was to be really upset about that. I was like, no, I don't want them to split up. I want them to kind of live happily ever after. But it's that is their best ending, because they're not splitting up forever. They'll find each other again. They're not, they'll write to each other. But it's going to be the first time any of them get to experience themselves and get to know who they are. And like that, I thought was not only was it a very good ending, but it was a really strong choice from the author not to just end it with we lived happily ever after all together. That was a very strong choice to split them up and have them go their separate ways, but still, love each other and still be in contact with each other. And even Constanza says, one of the things she wants to do is she wants to fall in love again. So she's not tied to being quote unquote married to these two for the rest of her life. I mean, she will always love them, but she will have other loves, and she will have other parts of her life separate from them. So I thought that was a really, really strong ending.
I think that it was good for them to end up doing their own thing in the end too, because while they may love each other, they were kind of forced to be in this marriage together.
Mm-hmm.
They were really there for him, not for each other. So this also allows them even more freedom in terms of that situation. So yeah, I was also I was like, wait, nobody's staying together at all? Like, it's only like 3 months later or something like that. I was like, that's really fast. But for having no freedom for so many years, especially Constanza would, I want to say she's probably been with him for like 1,000 years at this point, right? It's been a long time.
Because the only time we get a date, or the first time we get a date, is 1452, and at that point they had been together for centuries.
Yeah. I think that's the only thing that I'm frustrated about with this book, is that I don't necessarily have a concept of time.
I was really struck by how much time was passing, and I was like, how far are we going to go? Like, we got to, the 1400s, and I was like, okay. And then we got to the 1700s, and I was like, okay. And we got to the I was like, how far are we going here? Are we going to get like modern day Constanza? But we leave off in it's like early 1900s.
Yeah.
Which again is why we all thought Titanic. I was like, what is he going to do? Can he drown? Because they still need to they apparently still need to breathe. Their heart still beats. Like, I couldn't tell. I was like, what kills a vampire? Can he drown? Can he freeze to death? I need to know he's going to be okay. I also feel very protective over Alexi.
Yes. Same.
But I think for a book that we picked out for October, for horror, for spooky, this was a much more emotional read than I was expecting. In like a good way. Like, that's not a bad thing. I didn't go into this thinking that I was going to have a really visceral connection to a story like this and a relationship like this.
Yeah, I agree. It's I'm always hoping for this a little spookier for the month, but it was a really good book overall, so I'm not upset about it.
I did not feel like this spooky catfished me. I didn't feel spooky catfished because it was still vampires. It was vampires. There was no at the end, actually they had a disease and they were just no. So it wasn't spooky catfish, but it wasn't quite, I think, the maybe like 30 Days of Night vampire horror we were thinking going into this, which again is not a bad thing, but just the way that it kind of subverts your expectations like that.
Every time you say spooky catfish, I just think of Scooby-Doo. I just think you pull off the mask and it was like, old man Crothers, a janitor.
I thought it was a fucking ghost, but no.
Anyhow, do you have anything else to say about the book? I think we all recommend it. Yes.
So what would you give? What's your star rating that you gave this?
Emma, I know yours because you put it on Goodreads.
I did.
Which you gave it a 4, right? 4 out of 5.
I gave it a 4. I'm kind of vacillating toward 4.5, and I think the only thing holding it back from that is the point of view, which, regardless of the fact that I think it's super important, is it's just not my preferred thing.
Sure.
Oh, that's the other thing I didn't say was how so I didn't say earlier because it was a spoiler, but the reason I think that first person at the narrator, at the reader, is so important to the story is that, in the end, it's all Constanza telling her own story and telling it very specifically to him. She's very specifically telling this whole thing and her whole thought process through her life to him, which is fundamental to the story. That's the only thing I didn't bring up. But yeah, so I think that point of view is the only thing that's really keeping it from like a 4.5. It's just not my brain doesn't like it. It doesn't compute well. So it's a 4 for me.
Gotcha. Laura?
Same. I give it a 4. It was really good. I definitely do recommend it. I got used to the writing style, but there were times when the use of you like sometimes took me out of it. Because like it kind of shifts what you're experiencing sometimes. So if she's telling a story of her and the others but not Dracula, I'm reading it from that perspective, and then she'll suddenly say, and then you did this or you said this, and sometimes it would pull me out. But I do think that it still was a really great story, and it does make sense coming from that perspective. So yeah, 4.
I didn't even think about that until just now when you said that, like, the use of the word you over and over again. That makes it so much easier not to give him a name.
True.
Because if you had tried to write this in third person, it would have been a lot, I think, clunkier to have him be unnamed. But when it's first person at the reader, you just have the word you there, and that makes it so much easier not to use the name Dracula.
And it would be weird saying Lord all the time. She calls him my lord.
What about you, Jason?
I'll probably end up giving it a 4.
Don't let us peer pressure you. Don't let us pressure you.
You seem unsure.
No, it's not because of you. It's. I fully admit that it's probably my own hangups. It's sitting at about 3.5 for me, but that's really because I can't help but always connect it to
the original source,
the original thing. I'm okay with Alexa being a man. I don't care about that. There's been plenty of reimaginings where you gender swap characters or whatever. Like, that doesn't bother me at all. It's just like I'm trying to figure out where this fits into that story. I think the timeline, like where, like, because there's the reference. I mean, I saved the quote. It says, "After that whole debacle with the Harkers, he was sullen for months." Who were the Harkers? This is Alexi asking. "Before your time, dear, just some dreadful Victorians." So Alexi comes after the Harkers in the original story. But by that point, the Harkers, we already have the 3 women in the story. And then also that story ends with Dracula and the 3 brides dying. So granted, this is a very loose adaptation, and I just need to accept that. I fully accept that is just me not being able to just let go.
This is like me with movie adaptations.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the NBC show, because in that one, he doesn't have any brides at that point.
So what I'm hearing is I need to watch that show and then be like, wow, this show is horrible.
Yes.
You know, that book is really good, actually.
Yes, you're going to be
5 stars.
If you watch that show, you will be so angry. Because Mina Murray is in it, Jonathan Harker's in it. It's like all that same like Victorian time. You're going to be so angry. I can't wait.
but I like adaptations. Like, I'm the kind of person who reads adaptations, continuations of things, because I just like seeing how people use source material in new ways. Like the show Elementary, which was Sherlock Holmes in New York, and it's Joan Watson, not John Watson. Like, I loved it. Granted, I love Lucy Liu, so maybe that has something to do with it. But like, I'm all for that. But it's just for this one, for some reason, I think because it just takes place like in the same time, I'm just like, I wish it fit a little better or was a little more removed, one or the other.
So like, if that single line was taken out, would that be an easy 4 for you?
Yes, and that's what I'm saying. over like when I was reading it before I got to them, I'm like, okay, maybe I can accept this as not Dracula. It doesn't say it's Dracula. We're taking that storyline. We're taking the concept of a vampire who sires 3 spouses, and we're doing something different with it. I love that. Great, fantastic. Oh, there's the Harkers. Okay, this is definitely Dracula. It does not make sense anymore.
Maybe the Harkers knew more than one vampire. You never know. They were all over the place back then.
Harkers need to hang out with better people then. If you know more than one vampire, you're living your life wrong.
You know, this is probably like Gibson's one like reference like Easter egg to the original Dracula, and you're like all angry about it.
Yeah, should have left.
It's like,
it
I'll
out.
put this there for the fans.
Not this man. This one here for me. Say that right now. No, so honestly, it was a 4. It was really well written. Not quite what I thought going into it, but like I just wanted to consume it all. I wanted to sink my teeth into it and just read
Pun
it
intended.
and be done with it. And yeah, absolutely. So it was a 4. It was a solid book for sure. I highly recommend it to anybody who likes romance, who likes vampires. Yeah.
Wait, do you guys ever, for the podcast, do you ever look at 1-star reviews for the books that you read?
We tried that our very first test episode.
Did it not go well?
We were going to try this segment where we find like really bad reviews and kind of read them. And then we found, I forgot what book it was, Laura, but we found one and it got like real racist.
Oh no.
I think it was one that we didn't. Yeah, that one.
The Sound of Stars. And I think
which is a YA book.
It's YA book. I think the protagonist is a queer mixed Black woman. And the 1-star review did not take kindly to that.
Oh no.
And the review didn't start off that way, which was like, oh, this review is entertaining. This
they
will be
rolled
good to
you
read
in.
It. Yeah, I'm like, oh no, I made a mistake.
Let's not.
I made a mistake. Let's not do this ever again.
Oh no.
Anyhow, did you find a good one for this one?
Well, literally, just if you go to the 1-star reviews on Goodreads, the first one, this person can't read. This person's illiterate. They said it seems no one else is saying it, so I will say it. The prose in this book is terrible. Excuse me?
Wow.
Excuse me? Like, if you said that you didn't like the characters and you like personal preference stuff, I get that. The prose is like the best thing in this book.
Yes. Wow.
Illiterate. Absolutely. Jail.
Wow.
Straight to jail.
I did quickly kind of look up some of the lower starred reviews to see if anybody was in the same mindset about how it connects to the first one.
Mm-hmm. You find anything?
I didn't get to many of them. Well, currently on Goodreads, it has an average rating of 4.27, which means people love it. So there's not going to be a whole lot of 1 or 2-star reviews. And that's out of almost 4,400 ratings.
Yeah, there's only 33, I think, 1-star reviews out of like 4,000.
Yeah, so...
and they're wrong, so, you know.
They are wrong. The prose? Wow, okay.
I was like, cool, tell me you don't know how to read without telling me you don't know how to read.
Do either of you have any recommendations for any other books for people who may have liked this book? I have 2, but I'll open it up to you first.
I just want to recommend the Vampire Chronicles books by Anne Rice. It's been a long time since I've read them, but I remember really enjoying them. And I want to say they're considered classic vampire reads at this point.
Yeah, I think anything by Anne Rice would be.
Yeah, so I would say if you like vampires, I would definitely check those out. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of side books, but the main Vampire Chronicles books, I would say, are pretty good. And if you don't want to read them, you can also just watch the interview with the vampire.
Classic. They're remaking it, and I'm upset.
Queen of the Damned, with Aaliyah. Oh my god, the movie's great.
It's terrible, but also amazing.
No.
I used to watch that one all the time too.
It's right up there with Van Helsing. It's better than Van Helsing though. It's
First of all, how dare you?
I like the soundtrack.
Is Kate Beckinsale in it? No, I don't want to hear it.
I'm looking up when the first Vampire Chronicles book came out, 1976. Okay, I guess that's classic.
Why do I feel like Anne Rice is so much older than that?
No, I thought it was 80s, and so we said it's classics by now. I was like, is this like when you hear Foo Fighters on classic rock? Because that makes you feel really old, because I was a kid when that came out.
Okay, totally off topic, but also related. And this is something that I've been thinking about for the last few months. At what year does something become historic or classic?
I think the general answer to
age.
that tends to be 20 years, right? But that seems like not long enough, because when you think about the stuff that came out in 2001, I'm like, that's not classic.
Well, there was like I saw a thing where that 70s show, I forgot what year that show came out, but the amount of time from when it came out to the 70s is the same amount of time from like now to like 2005 or something. And so it's like,
It's so weird.
wait, what?
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense at all. I don't know.
My brain still processes the 80s as 20 years ago.
It was, right?
Yeah.
I'll accept 30 years. No more than that. Okay, anyhow, recommendations.
Book recommendations. So I don't think I have any, because the three things that stand out about this would be the prose, the writing, and I don't think I've read anything that's quite like this. It's very lyrical, and my favorite bit of lyrical prose is definitely The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. But that's not what I would recommend. Like, if you liked Dowry of Blood, go read Addie LaRue. Like, if you like lyrical writing, I think go read Addie LaRue. So it's the prose, the relationship, and again, I've never read anything that handled a relationship quite like this, and then the vampires. And all the vampire books that I read are not ones that I would recommend. I'm like, if you go read the Sookie Stackhouse books.
You don't recommend Twilight?
No, not so much. Not for Dowry of Blood fans.
Okay.
Look, the nostalgia is there, but like, because the vampire books I have under my belt are like Twilight, The Vampire Diaries, which get fucking weird as shit.
Weird.
They get so weird, and I had to stop. And then the Sookie Stackhouse books, which also get weird as fuck, and I had to stop. Once they brought in the fairies, I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this anymore. But yeah, as far as like vampires, and then technically the From Blood and Ash books, because they try not to be vampires and werewolves, but they are.
And we're gonna get you some better vampire books.
First of all, how dare you? Twilight is a classic. It's a classic.
Was it 20 years ago?
Yeah.
20 years ago.
We're getting there. But yeah, so I don't think
we're almost there.
I don't think I have anything that, like, every time it's like, what would you recommend if you liked this? I struggle, because I'm like, it depends on what you liked about this.
Yeah.
So all I've got is, if you like lyrical writing, read The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, which is absolutely 100% nothing like this in any way, shape, or form.
It's funny because Goodreads, they have the section similar books. Addie is the first book on this
Hell
list.
Yeah!
When I was looking at
it
reviews,
does have like a toxic relationship with like a dark older being.
When I was looking up reviews, someone did say Addie LaRue.
Fair enough.
In the review.
I'm not crazy.
I haven't read it myself, so I couldn't tell you
it's
exactly
the writing.
why they said that.
It's the first time, because when Addie was like 5 months after I got really back into reading, and it's the first time that I've looked at like the writing of a book and been like, this is lyrical and beautiful, and I could read your shopping list. And now she's my favorite author, and I'm on book number 8 of hers that I'm reading.
Wow.
I'm just going through her catalog at this point.
All right.
How about you? What were you said you had 2.
I had 2. The first, I'm going to go chronological order. The first is Carmilla by Joseph Sheridan Le Fanu. It is a 1872 vampire novella about a young woman who's preyed upon by a female vampire named Carmilla. And it is a prototypical example of the lesbian vampire. So if you like your lesbian vampires, this is like the book that first did it. So check it out. It's a classic, a real classic. I like this Anne Rice fake classic shit.
Wow.
But do I trust lesbian vampires written by a man? I don't know.
You got to read it and make your own decision.
It's a novella, so
it's a novella. It's
really short.
It's real short. And then the second book is The Lost Girls by Sonia Hartle, which I mentioned earlier on. Let me know if this sounds familiar. 3 women who have been turned to vampires by a man who promises that if they've been the only ones that he's ever loved, find out that that's bullshit. And they all band together to kill the person who turned them.
Oh.
Okay.
So it's basically this story that we just talked about taking place now. Like the
Oh,
main
modern.
girl,
Okay.
it's modern. Like the main
Okay.
girl has a part-time job at Taco Bell.
Love it.
Okay.
Yeah, and then she doesn't know that there's other ex-girlfriends, and then 2 other ones show up. It's like, hey, he's lied to you. He's gonna do it again. We got to stop him. So if you literally like the story of this one and you want to read it now, check out that one.
You had me at women banding together to murder a man. Sold. Sold.
All right.
Don't even got to tell me what he did. I don't care. I believe it. Good for them.
That's all I got.
Cool.
Emma, I'll give you a bunch of recommendations later
Yes.
for other vampires.
For good vampire novels.
Yeah.
That don't turn into fairies or like weird witches. God, Vampire Diaries got weird.
No promises.
It got so weird.
Well, this has been our look at all things vampires.
Right. We're still recording.
We are. So we should probably wrap it up. Emma, thank you so much for joining us on this episode.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Is there anything that you would like to plug while you're here?
You can find me on all of the places at Emma Skies. My Instagram, my Twitter, all of that stuff is Emma Skies. You can find me on Twitch under the same name. And I have a dedicated book Instagram, which is Biblio Skies, where I just talk about books and nothing but books. And that, I keep saying it's my secondary account because it is technically my secondary account. It's the only account I use. I'm on it 24/7, and then I remember to post on my quote unquote main account like once a week.
Yeah, I think there's a transition.
Yeah.
I get confused.
Have more fun on it.
I don't know what to tag you on Instagram anymore.
Neither do I.
Existential crisis. Well, I highly recommend her Instagram account. It's really good. Yeah. Laura, is there anything you'd like to plug? It felt rude to not ask, though.
Not really. I mean, unless anybody wants to follow my own Instagram or Twitter, it's AKA_LB ELLEBEE. I mostly just post stories on my Instagram though, so
I guess since all the cool kids are doing it, you can find me at JRicochet on Instagram. I post shitty pictures of my vampire books that I'm reading. I set out to just read spooky books this month, and they've all been vampire books for some reason. I must like vampires.
I think so.
Yeah. And other than that, that's it. Thank you so much to the both of you for talking to me about this book. Now we need to figure out when we're doing our After Dark episode.
I got both of them. They're right there.
Which I feel like this is a good kind of transition into that.
Have you guys talked about what the After Dark book is going to be?
Nope.
We've not mentioned it at all until tonight with you.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The first episode when we joked about it, and then just now when I've confirmed we're doing it.
Was that really how? Did it come about from that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was another reason we asked you.
Hell yeah. Oh my god, I'm gonna corrupt all of us.
Yeah. And yeah, so look out for that whenever that happens. All right.
Yeah, teaser. We'll have more information later.
Yep. All right. That's it, I guess. Thanks again. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next month. Bye.
See ya. This episode of Shit We've Read has been an Oblivion Geeks production, hosted by Laura Benson and Jason Rico, with music by Joshua Chilton.
To join the discussion on this and all other books we've read, find us at Shit We've Read on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.
For episode transcripts and more information about us, please visit shitwe'veread.com.
This podcast is part of the Bilo Network. Visit bilonetwork.com for more great geeky podcasts.
Thanks so much for listening.